مرحبا بكم مرة أخرى. الآن أدعو السيد جو سايمون من المسابقة العالمية للجامعات لتصميم الأبنية المعتمدة على الطاقة الشمسية في وزارة الطاقة الأمريكية.
I hope you've enjoyed your break. Welcome back. Now I would like to invite Joe Seaman, Competition Manager for the U.S. Department of Energy Solar's Decathlon. Please welcome on the stage.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I'm here today to talk about the competition and how do we make this exciting for students, for the public, and for faculty, and for professionals. So how do you make building science, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and architectural design exciting? How do you make it so that it's not just a house, but it is something more? It is a vision, it is an idea, it is a commitment, and that perseverance that Edwin talked about as well. How do you make it so that everything is different, so that you don't have 20 of the same answers, but you have 20 potential futures that you can see that really commits to what the benefits of working with university students, working with professors, working with faculty, and working with industry can lead to? Can you find a unique solution that works in a winter climate, in a desert climate? Can you find something where people can learn from hands-on experience what works and what doesn't? I think what is unique about the Solar Decathlon is that it's not just a design competition. It's not taking an idea, writing something about it, and turning in a paper, but it is finding out, does my idea actually work? You may learn by putting together a project that it could be a little bit better if you moved something a few millimeters one way, or if you considered a different product. Can you find a way to work with the engineering school and the mechanical school? Can you find a way to work with the architects and the communicators so that you have a better solution? I think that by bringing in the public, you're able to educate not just from a scientific point of view, not just from a technical point of view, but how do you make people change their actions? Just because a building can be operated efficiently doesn't mean it will be. I think that by pairing with the history of the sciences, by pairing with the research, with the outreach and the tours, you can show people how they can be comfortable with something new. So the U.S. Department of Energy, as Richard talked about, challenges collegiate teams to design, build, and operate solar-powered houses. The winner wins just that, the excitement of being the team that blends affordability, consumer appeal, and design excellence. So this video will show the overview of the competition and how quickly things come together on the National Mall. So you can see work starts very quickly. Teams will show up with cranes and their pre-built modules. They will really start to bring those pieces together. They'll work overnight, they'll work through the morning, and they'll work with each other. So there'll be professional organization. So a university may not be an expert at assembly or construction, but they can find the professionals in their community. They can partner with a builder. They can partner with a transportation company. They can learn from each other so that everyone can see what the future may hold. You may consider how these pieces come together. So the houses are built, the village is brought together, you have an electric utility, you have signage, you have pathways, you're able to test the house, you're able to make sure that it's fully functional. So it's not just an idea, but it's a fully executed product. As you can see here, you're working through the night, you have lighting, you have tents. As things begin to clear up, you prepare for the public, you make sure your house operates. My history is I've operated as the competition manager for the Solar Decathlon, but before that I was a student. And what I always said when we were recruiting people is that the Solar Decathlon is unique because it has something for everyone. It doesn't matter whether or not your field of focus is architecture or engineering or industrial design, furniture, communications, advertising, business. There is something for everyone if you want to be involved. You need to figure out how to fund things, purchase things, transport things, have lodging, have food. There are schools who did a great job of working together to prepare meals for each other every morning and every afternoon so that everyone could work efficiently and safely. One of the things about the Solar Decathlon is focusing on that safe operation. So it's not just make a house that maybe works, but make sure it's safe and then make sure it's comfortable for yourself, your family, and your visitors. So you can see here how the public is touring through the house. So it's open at night. We have contests. So we make sure that the house is fully operational. They have to run their clothes washer. They have to have the lights on. They have to host a dinner party. They have to remain net zero. And you can see as the houses are complete how the entire process works. So that competition really shows that collaboration. It shows that excitement. It shows that with community, you can end up with an answer that is better than any university would have completed on their own. So it is one competition. It is 10 contests. 20 teams, more or less. Sometimes there's fewer, sometimes there's more. 7 to 10 days of assembly, 9 days of contests. You have hundreds of students, thousands of visitors, and the stories that go on for days. I think that you'll find that the Solar Decathlon really is a family. It ends up everywhere. You can reach out to people in China, in Australia, in the US, in Europe, in the Middle East, in South America, and there's always someone who is connected. There's always some small degree of separation between that process, that learning experience, and what that final product is. So as everyone comes together, it really is a long effort. That 2 years goes by very quickly, but the final result lasts for decades. The Solar Decathlon, as has been mentioned, has happened in Washington, D.C. For 7 times, in Europe, in China, and Latin America. And I think what's unique as well is every team has its own unique personality. There'll be some that are small and focused. There's maybe 15 students who work for the 2 full years as a very tight, small family. They're a very tight, committed group of university students who work day and night to make sure that that is executed. There are others that are larger, where there's temporary people who participate through one course. So they participate through 2 courses over 2 semesters. They graduate, and a new group of students come on. Sometimes there are 1 or 2 faculty. Sometimes there are 6 or 7 faculty who all work together. Each team has its own unique goals and its own unique strategies for why it's going to be successful. I think also what's unique is that every team can define what is most important to them. So while we have a collective agreement and a collective excitement about what the competition can be, they may have a specific target. So in their city, in their community, it's extremely important to target this particular thing. So I think you'll hear about that from Rome as well as from Stevens as they talk later this afternoon, but you may see some that target low-income housing, or may target disaster resistance, or remote housing for workers who don't have access to normal facilities, or you may have something that responds to a particular environment, so a particularly cold environment. And I think that by defining what's important, you can get even more excitement and relationship with your local community. In China, you can target things that are different. You can see what comes next, what comes into the future. As Richard mentioned, in the U.S. Solar Decathlon, you can have different solutions. Some of these were transported by train. Some of them came, like this house right here, which is Team Austria, in shipping containers alone. So your standard rectangular shipping containers is possible for transportation. It takes creativity, it takes planning and organization, but what you can come with that organization is limitless. So the competition, I'm going to talk very briefly about how that process works and how we make sure that the houses and the competition remains exciting and unique. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that things are safe. So we do implement building codes. We implement a minimum performance for the International Residential Code, the Electric Code, and the Energy Conservation Code. We have competition rules that incentivize exceeding standards, that incentivize highly efficient homes, and also look at innovative technologies and unique solutions. As Richard mentioned as well, there are juried contests. So you consider architecture, engineering, market appeal, communications, affordability, and other things. You have measured contests. You make sure that the house actually performs, that it's not just a theoretical idea, but that it works in the way the students were considering. So you want to make sure that that new technology is reliable, make sure that it is functional, and that you can actually have a house that is comfortable for its occupants. Because for all the energy efficiency in the world, if it's not something that is comfortable, it's not something that's convenient, it won't ever be used. And how do you make it exciting? I think that, as Edward mentioned, it's good to be excited. It's good to be passionate. How do you make it so that people care about the performance of the refrigerator? How do you make it so people care about turning lights off at the end of the day? So you measure that process. You show the results. You consider something that is equal and is comparable. You show how you can run a clothes washer in an efficient way and still be very successful. I think that you can walk through with juries, you can walk through the public and explain things at any level of detail that's necessary. So whether it's a 5-minute tour where someone walks through and they say, I like this house, I would want it bigger, I would want it in a different situation, I don't like this color, that's okay, but they can walk away with a new understanding of, we can learn about a better type of window, we can learn about a better type of insulation, we can learn about turning down our heat or our air conditioning at the times when we are at work. What are those things that you can walk away with a little nugget of idea for the public, and then as students to understand that they can continue this throughout their entire careers. So for the monitored performance for the US event, we consider temperature, humidity, refrigerator, freezer, energy balance, and some appliances. We asked teams to verify that the teams were able to cook for their families, that they were able to do laundry, that they were able to have the lights on, and were able to consider the outdoor environment as well, so that environmental sustainability, about the transportation, about those different contests. And we want to bring this back to what's the latest and greatest in the area. So by bringing in professional juries, both from the region and from around the world, you can consider how well did this team perform against its peers. Everything is subjective. There's always something that's going to be unique and exciting, but I think that by balancing the contest, much has been done here for the Middle East as well, you make sure that you have unique targets. So one team may choose to really focus on high quality finishes and architecture and excitement, and another may choose to focus on actual performance of those houses, and both of them can end up very well. So as the organizer, so as the laboratory, as the Department of Energy, what's important? It's understanding what are the rules, what's the structure that's necessary for the competition. So like with DEWA, for building a microgrid, for building safety practices, for understanding the overall event, for making sure that the public is safe, that there are facilities, that there are services, and that people know to come. But what is the role of the student team? So the student team brings the house. So between submitting a proposal, developing a strong team, understanding what will university faculty do, what support will there be from the administration, what will students do? Will students have coursework? Will they work outside of their course? Will they stay committed for that full 2 years, or will you have different groups of students over that process? There's any possibility of structure, and every team can be unique for those university needs, and also with partnerships. So as was mentioned, one university may be very strong with power electronics or with smart grid technologies, and a different university may be very strong with building design, and you can form those relationships. Maybe you can have a partnership with different countries or areas, so that someone from Europe may be able to support a university here, or maybe there's some history as well. But once that team is developed, how do you get that process started of developing and detailing a house? So working through schematic design deliverables, working through drawings, working through construction documentation, raising money, making sure that those funds are there. So finding those partnerships. I think that as a former student who led a university team as well as an organizer, what's unique about the Solar Decathlon is that there are unique benefits for any set of companies that may partner with a university, from research and innovation, from understanding that if there's a new heat pump, hot water heater, how does that actually operate in a particular climate? How do you test that? How do you educate students? So for others, it may be that by working with a certain type of structural hanger for the next 30 years of their careers, those students may remember how well that performed. So that company may want to partner with the university to support that student. Another may want to learn who your best and brightest are and hire those students after graduation. And a third may want to connect with the public. They may want to be able to show this is a sustainable type of appliance, of an oven, of a cooktop. They may want to be able to show this is a new type of window that could be considered for new modern construction. And again, these houses as prototypes can show not only what can exist for a small footprint house, but what can exist for a larger development as well. There's a lot of that transference. So as that is developed, as you understand what that funding and transportation and hotel accommodations and things like that are, you move on into the specific details of construction documentation. How will we actually build this? How will we transport it? I think what's unique about Solo Decathlon as well is because it has to be transported, you have to consider things that are not always necessary for a normal residential house. How do you bring these pieces together? How do you fit them within a shipping container? How do you make it economical? As you continue to develop that, you reach out to your local community as well for communications and outreach, whether it's a website, whether it's tours, whether it's bringing students from kindergarten or first grade or second grade to learn about energy efficiency and consider their operations at home. You can bring the community together with this common goal and excitement. You begin construction. This is usually several months in advance of the competition. You test, you make sure that those innovations and that research you're pursuing actually function. You transport the house, and then as Richard mentioned, those 2 months during the event itself, you assemble, you have a public exhibit, you have a competition, you disassemble, and then you think about the future. So how does that house have future potential and future impact? Could it be a local center of education for a utility, a local center of education for your university? Could you have students living there and testing how the house actually functions? Could you operate different HVAC systems over many different years and see how it performs in different environments? And then finally, how do you learn from this and how do you improve? So for the U.S. event, just as a scope and an expectation of what we usually ask for from our students is that over the course of the 2-year period, we will collect an excitement video, we'll consider that schematic design, that very high-level goal, make sure that it's compliant with the general scope and rules and everyone really understands what's going on. We will have a preliminary website for communications outreach. We'll try to review construction documentation in the early stage for compliance with building code, for compliance with accessibility, for compliance with fire safety, things like that. We'll ask teams to consider their health and safety as well. For students who don't do construction all the time or for partnering with professionals who do, how do you make sure that people involved with your project are safe? How do you make sure that when they work with power tools, when they work with electricity, that everyone remains safe? And we end up with a competition that is more successful rather than less. We move on, we ask for computer-animated walkthroughs or renderings so that you can teach the public about the event. We have a deliverable for more details. We ask for a summary for reaching out, so handouts for communication with the public, for advertisements. We have safety plans, and then we have deliverables for review by the juries. But that's over the course of those 2 years, and along the whole way, the university is building their house, they're preparing it for transportation, developing those agreements and opportunities. And from an organizer point of view, what are we trying to do to support that? We're making sure that everyone is on the same page. We're supporting with sponsorships. We're supporting with training on how to build these houses, how to consider the building code compliance, what is happening with other people, what's the coordination for cranes, for juries, for inspectors, and then that determination of the windows overall. As Edwin mentioned, that real-time transmission of information. How can you learn about the performance of the house? Can you see who was a net producer of electricity and who was negative? Can you see when there was cloud cover? Can you learn about why a house was too hot because their windows failed to open? What are those different considerations for the scoring and the monitoring? And how is their education, both of the students and the faculty, but also the professionals and the public? I think that this is the results of the 2015 competition, and what's interesting about this is that you can see that some teams did better in juried contests and some teams did better in measured contests, and those teams that did best in both won the competition overall. So you'll hear later from Stevens, but if you look about at number 6, Clemson, you can see the first 5 contests in blue, in orange, the light blue, the purple, and the yellow is the juried contest. So this is when the team of professionals comes through and determines, is this house well designed? Is it innovative? Is it sustainable? Is it good architecture? And you can see how far they went in those juried contests. They were second overall from a juried results, but their house failed to operate in a very predictable and functional way, so they got 6th place overall because they struggled with the comfort zone. You can see the small section for green. Their house was not the proper temperature or the proper humidity. So there was some trade-offs in how their house actually operated. So those teams that do well are able to balance that entire process. So you can see here as well for Missouri S&T, they earned 7th overall with the juries. So something that they had done didn't resonate very successfully with the architecture jury or the engineering jury, but they operated their house extremely well. So they earned 3rd place in the functioning of their house. So running the washer, running the dishwasher, having the lights on, and overall they were able to earn 5th place, but it's because that balance between the juries and the performance of their house was unequal that they got a different space overall. Similar for University of Buffalo with 1st place in measured contests and 5th place overall in juries, they earned 2nd overall. So how that actually balances out shows how different priorities and different criteria of the rules can make a big impact on the success of your participation in the competition. Showing through the 2015 results, I think that you can see that every team has a very unique response to their target market and response to their local community. So Cal Poly is able to consider a large 1-bedroom house that considers outdoor living. Sacramento State has a certain type of solar panels that they were testing, and Crowder Jury had resistance for tornadoes and how that could be protected and how they could power the community in the event of disaster. Clemson, as Richard talked about, had that unique method of construction with computer-controlled routing. You can see low-cost housing. You can see a house that uses old shipping containers, a house that's considered for multi-story living, one for disaster recovery again, which you'll learn about later. One for the northern regions of the United States with very cold temperatures. How does that need to be different? One for suburban living. And I think that for indoor-outdoor living, so in Austin, how do you have a house that works in the alleyways of the city to add more space in a city that's running out of available land? For you at Buffalo, how do you have outdoor living in an environment that's often very cold by adding a greenhouse up and around the house as well? In UC Davis, they thought a lot about the agricultural community. How does this work for the worker housing? How does this work for low income? For West Virginia Rome, how do you bring a different environment into a region that's not familiar with that type of construction? As Richard mentioned, the impacts are huge. The impacts are substantial. So as mentioned, students work within clean energy. They have better jobs, they have changes in their majors, and they have more clean energy businesses. From personal experience, there's stories of people who have started energy monitoring businesses, facilities, they have started developers, they have started clean energy workforces, they've had energy management systems for greenhouse construction of renewable food development. It could be anything from smart grids and power grids to furniture making. You don't know where the students may end up, but as one big family, there's connections all over the world. So overall, I think that the Solar Decathlon is important because it chooses visitors and competition students who choose more energy efficient appliances, who work in more clean energy jobs, and who change the world by moving forward. So in summary, what is the Solar Decathlon? It's one big organization that brings together 20 separate ideas that have all been vetted through actual construction. It's taking an idea to execution. It's not just an idea that lives in your head and doesn't change the outcome, but it's something that comes all the way to fruition and is a functional product. It is education, so it's reaching out and teaching about safety, it's teaching about building codes, it's teaching about assembly methods. It's about teamwork and hard work. It's about working with different disciplines so that the engineering school talks with the architecture school, that talks with communications and advertising and accounting and fundraising. It's hands-on. It's getting outside of your building and understanding how something actually works. How do you communicate that in a way where builders can actually execute that? So maybe in real life, the students or faculty may not be building the houses or building the buildings themselves, but how do you communicate that on a set of drawings so that it gets built correctly? Because whether or not you're considering about your air tightness, or you're considering about the way solar is supposed to work, or self-shading of solar panels, if it's not installed correctly, it doesn't perform the way that it was designed. So how do you communicate that in a clear set of drawings? And you can learn that by trying to execute upon the actual drawings that you started with. It's about problem solving. So what is going on underneath the house? How do you deal with something in real time when you have a very strict deadline and you have a very strict set of situations that it needs to function within the next 3 hours? And how do you do so that that safety remains paramount? How do you operate successfully? How do you meet a schedule? How do you meet a performance metric? How do you find out how things affect each other? So here, one of the contests is that we have teams simply boil water. It doesn't seem that difficult, but it puts a lot of humidity into their house. It takes a lot of energy, and it affects their performance in their temperature contest, in their humidity contest, in comfort zone. It affects their performance in their energy balance. It affects their performance on the demand management from their communications with their utilities. So how are things interconnected? How does, by working with these different disciplines, result to you in having a more successful house and more successful performance overall? Again, whether or not this is extracted from a single-family residence to a 300-unit building, the concepts are still the same. How are these things integrated? How are these things important in improving the future of the world? And also, how are they functional? So we ask teams to host a dinner party, have their student neighbors over and learn from each other, tell those stories about what worked well, what didn't. When did a house hit a bridge? When did the plumbing stop working? When did you find out that a sponsor failed to give you a particular set of solar panels that you needed, and how did you solve that problem? That problem solving, that stories, that history makes one big family, as Edwin mentioned, that has a commitment and a perseverance that is unique to the Solar Decathlon. And just in conclusion, it is one family. It is one group of individuals with a like mind and a like excitement in learning through doing, in learning through failing, in learning through succeeding, in learning by taking a concept and executing that overall. So thank you very much. I'm very excited for your future.